to another episode of the Nebraska Shoot Around podcast, where we finally get to talk about a win. But first, we have to talk about arguably the worst performance of the season. So I'm feeling a little conflicted over here. Bigelow, what about you?
I'm feeling very conflicted as well. When we last left the people last week, we said they had two very winnable games that we'd be able to talk about, and we hope we'd be able to talk about some positivity. And thanks to last night, we have the smallest sliver of positivity, but we can't be quick to forget what we sat through on Saturday afternoon at Pinnacle Bank Arena. So it's a tale of two basketball games this evening. But yeah, they finally won a game. They did the thing, but not before all but stomping on any positivity the game before. So yeah. Here we are.
Yeah. Quickly before we get into the games, what would have been worse? Like, what order would you like if these were going to be the performances? Would it have been better to come out and smack Northwestern and then to like, oh yeah, we're feeling great, and then turn around and get destroyed by Minnesota? Or is this version less damaging, where you're still wondering, like, how were you not ready for the previous best opportunity to get a win and then bounce back and win? But you're thinking, well, where was this before?
I think I'll still take this one, because if they stomped Northwestern and then, let's say, were to lose the rest of their games, then the football team parallels would be even more terrifying. So I will stick with the order that things played out.
That is a very good point. So yeah, let's start with that. Obviously, we talked about the stretch Nebraska had coming up with the bottom half of the conference filling out the rest of their schedule until the end. And Northwestern visiting Lincoln was the first of those games. And Northwestern is a team that hadn't really gotten blown out all year long, except for one game against Purdue. And I mean, Purdue will do that to a lot of teams. But they had also only won 3 conference games in 11 tries. So they were tied for 11th, I believe, in the standings at that point. And Nebraska, for whatever reason, they were not ready to play. They got smacked 87-63, and the game was not that close. It got up to 35 a couple of times in the second half before kind of the bench, the reserves made it. I believe they closed it on an 11-0 run. Northwestern didn't score in the last 4 minutes.
I think you are correct. If Chris Collins didn't call off the dogs with 5 minutes left, they could have easily lost this game by 40, which is what I was sitting next to you worried about for most of the second half. Was, all right, they're going to lose. Are they really going to lose by 40 to Northwestern today? That was the number one fear in my head sitting at that game on Saturday. But I mean, because I like pain, I rewatched this game, and then I kind of did a side-by-side comp to the Michigan game in December. When was that?
December.
That was an even worse stomping at PBA, and they were eerily similar. Just the two themes of very little effort on the defensive end, lots of wide open threes allowed, and in the end, just a very, very tough result to swallow. But yeah, what did you have to say about this one?
Yeah. So Northwestern finished 13 of 31 from 3, which is really good. That's a lot of threes, 41.9%. They started 9 of 17. So a team comes out and shoots 9 of 17 from 3 on you. And that was in most of that damage was done in the first half, or all that 9 of 17 was in the first half. I believe they were 10 of 22 in the first half.
You're right. And I think coming in, they only were taking 8 threes a game. So
that is accurate. So that's where they were. Like you're just not going to have a shot to compete with the team. Because the math just isn't going to work out. You banged nine threes in 20 minutes or less than 20 minutes. I think it was 9 in the first 16 minutes. So yeah, the last three came of that 9-17 start came with just under 5 minutes to play in the half. So, and I went back and rewatched. I didn't rewatch the whole game, but I mostly rewatched the first half and focused on those 3-pointers and how they were getting them. And basically, it was a lot of wide open looks. I mean, Northwestern got some better looks that they just flat out missed as well. But there was a combination of guys dying on screens, screeners, defenders not helping each other, just no rotations, no awareness of where shooters are, and just getting lost. Like, it was basically every possible way to get gashed by 3-point shooting is what happened in Nebraska. They just, I think CJ Wilcher said it, they just weren't ready to play. And it really is baffling, like how, again, everything on the line, this opportunity that was in front of them, you can come out flat in this game of all games. Like the Rutgers game was kind of, that was the first one that was a kind of game this season, I think, because obviously the Michigan game was disappointing, and then the Auburn followed up, but we know how good Auburn is, and they had the illness going through the team. They barely got to practice leading up to those games, so there was kind of mitigating circumstances there, I think. They definitely quit, but they also didn't have a lot of energy, I think, going in. The Rutgers game was a little different. They got to practice fully leading up to it. And
Northwestern.
No, I'm saying the Rutgers game leading up to that. But still, that's on the road. It's a really hard place to play.
Oh, the Rat game. Yeah, the Rat game where they got smacked. Yep.
Yeah. So that was like, okay, that's not great. But again, it's on the road. Now you come home to a worse team, although Northwestern just did beat Rutgers barely in overtime, but they gave up a 24-point lead in the second half and had to win in overtime. But I think Rutgers is probably a better team than Northwestern, at least a team that had won more games in the Big Ten at that point. And you get beat by a comparable, if not worse team at home. So that's the one you're like, wow, this thing could be spiraling out of control. What does this mean for the rest of the season? Has this team given up? All those questions I think we're starting. And so that's what made the follow-up performance that much more important. But in the meantime, it was, I don't think you can feel great coming out of that. Boo Buie led them with 27 points, 6 of 11 from 3. He was 4 of 7, I believe, during that first half. And again, they were just multiple times where guys are hot and they're going under screens and bigs aren't helping out. They're just hanging back and just begging guys to hit screens. You got Ty Berry, who is that's what he does. He comes in and shoots, and you lose him twice. Like
probably the one guy on the scout coming in that you for sure can't leave, and you're leaving him.
Yeah, and right away, and he gets 2 good looks and knocks him down. So they just weren't ready to play. I don't know why that is, why widespread the effort level was so low, the energy level was so low. Props to Alonzo Verge, though, probably made the most impressive play of the game. That kind of like hustle, diving out of bounds, steal, what that led to a transition bucket for Nebraska. It might have been a dunk or something, but and he like was seriously fired up after that. But one hustle play in a 40-minute game doesn't really do much for you, especially when the other team's ramming threes at you. So disappointing effort. You look at CJ Wilcher is really the only guy that showed up on offense, and that was mostly just him knocking down shots. Like he finished with 15 points with 3 of 6 from 3, had a couple of cuts for buckets. Bryce, after the recent really good stretch, 10 points on 2 of 8 shooting, 1 assist and 3 turnovers. So not a particularly impactful game from him. He was just kind of everybody else kind of going through the motions a little bit. And they just couldn't find anybody that could pull them out of whatever funk they were in.
Yeah, naturally, right when Bryce had a couple people, including me, planning to write about his improved stretch of play. Not only do they go out and have that performance they did against Northwestern, but he was kind of getting rattled by Chase Audige of all people on the defensive end. He did a pretty good job on Bryce, but Yeah, this was a game, as my former boss, Coach Miles, would say, when results like this come about. You know what the best part about that game is? It's over. Um, and but another good. I mean, so yeah, like you said, Wilcher kind of the only bright spot. He showed up. He's been much improved in conference play. I'll say that. He's shooting it. I think he's shooting it in like a 40% range from three since the start of conference play. He's been
I'm looking that up right now.
Yeah, he's been since the start of conference play, January 1st, CJ Wilcher is shooting 21 of 44 from three, 47.7%.
Yeah.
So that's a positive.
That's what he was brought in here to do. And you need guys to be able to do that. If that's what his job is, you got to go out and perform your job. And we've got, CJ at 41.5%, 22 of 53 in 13 conference games. You've got Keisei Tominaga is 14 of 41, so 34%. And Verge is actually 7 of 19, so 36.8%. The problem is Lat's only 11 of 37, Bryce is 17 of 57. Kobe's only 11 of 39. So you don't have everybody shooting at the rate that you need to, but yes, I think the 21 of 44 stat didn't include the first two.
Yep, I think you're right. You are correct. Yep, so. You're right.
But still, overall, he's shooting the way that they need him to in conference play, and they're shooting 32% overall from three in the Big Ten. So not great, but they have shot well enough recently to be competitive in a lot of these games. And that was a big one. I guess you mentioned CJ as one bright spot. The other one, I guess, was congrats to Jackson Cronin, walk-on, getting his first bucket at the collegiate level. Got in there and got a little bucket inside, and then Keon Edwards knocked down his first three as a Husker. He had obviously, we see in him, he got chances to play throughout, and he was he sold himself as a shooter, said that's what he does well, and it hadn't really happened in the limited playing time, the stretches that he got early in the season when he's part of the rotation, but he finally got one to go. So that's garbage time. At least it was memorable for a couple of those guys there in the second half.
Yeah, gotta like it when you make the box score, right? So let's transition to happier things. That is the game that took place last night while we're recording this. Nebraska defeats Minnesota 78-65 at Pinnacle Bank Arena for their first win over a Big Ten opponent in 345 days, or over a power conference opponent in 345 days. And the first time fans were in the building to see them defeat a Big Ten team since they beat Iowa miraculously in Fred's first year. So that tells you how things have gone these last couple of years, but we're here to be positive. This is a game Nebraska led wire to wire. Obviously the two highlights of the first half were the two Super McGowan's brother connection alley-oop dunks for Bryce. Got a little juice going for the. I didn't see a good enough crowd shot to make a guesstimate of how many people were there. Did we get in?
We won't talk about it.
Okay. Then we don't have the official tickets scanned number sitting around, but so the McGowans have started off well. How about the defense? Got to give it to the defense. Ball pressure was there. They threw out the game, and probably the halftime deficit could have been more, if I had to say.
Yeah. So I guess I'll start with the defensive effort. And Bryce, we asked him, Brad, and he said it started in practice. Fred talked on whatever Tuesday about how they normally put the game plan in 2 days in advance, but they waited until the day before this week because they wanted to spend Monday working on themselves and making a really good competition day and really getting the guys going. And it paid dividends for one of the few times this season it actually translated over to the game and was there for the most part throughout. And they weren't perfect. There were still a number of missed opportunities, and a lot of their defensive success was helped along by very poor play for Minnesota. But there was a noticeable difference between the Northwestern and Minnesota games, and just the ball pressure. And I forgot which game it was, but when Trey got back, Fred mentioned like kind of how his return brought some good stuff out of Alonzo as well defensively and pressuring the ball. And you had both those guys. They were getting through screens. They were pressuring the ball 1 through 5. You had the big guys out on the floor a little bit, just kind of getting a hand in guys' faces and giving them something to think about. And it led to Minnesota just they weren't comfortable most of the night. And they missed some wide open threes where Nebraska, combination of Nebraska breakdowns and Minnesota executing well. And even those, they weren't able to knock them down. And part of that is being comfortable. That Northwestern game, they got a lot of really good threes. They got really comfortable. And then when that happens, you start feeling good about hitting tougher ones. And Minnesota, I mean, Jameson Ball did in the second half. We'll get to that later. But for the most part, Nebraska didn't let them get comfortable for any consistent stretch. There were a few stretches here or there where things kind of waned a little bit, but somebody made a play to get them right back in it, and they turned it around and kind of picked up the effort once again. So impressive performance despite not playing super clean basketball from start to finish, but this was the effort level they needed, and they certainly got it, and it resulted in a 78-65 win that, again, could have been more than that. I think so. They led 32-21 at halftime. I think I counted, I think it was maybe 6 or 7 like opportunities that they should have put points on the board. They just didn't because guys weren't able to make plays. There was a bad turnover in transition from Kobe Webster. There was a missed layup from Kobe Webster. There was a missed contested layup from Trey. There was Eduardo Andre failing, like I think they called it a missed dunk, but he missed one at the rim. And then Lat Mayen had a couple where it's like you got to finish that, and so that kind of points back to some of the roster limitations that we've been talking about all season, and the lack of athleticism, lack of strength, coordination, whatever it may be in certain guys' cases. But they were shooting right at 50%, I believe, on layups and dunks, which that's a good field goal percentage. That's not a good percentage at the rim.
Yeah, not at all.
So a lot of missed opportunities. They could have been up 25. Like they could have been up 20 plus in the first half. Instead, they took an 11-point lead into halftime. And I really think I kind of broke this game down into a few different stretches. The first is the 9-2 start. And it really did start on defense. And Nebraska, during that start, they held Minnesota to 1 of 5 from the field, 0 of 3 from 3, with 4 turnovers. And that's how they jumped out to the 9-2 start. And
this is a Minnesota team too that didn't turn the ball over coming into this game. I think they were last in the Big Ten in turnovers, or at least close to it. I know they averaged single digits. I think they averaged like eight turnovers a game, I think.
Yeah, like 8.3, I think, something.
Yeah, like that. And Nebraska got after them right away.
So 9.4, I think. Maybe that's what, and they had 10 before the last media timeout.
Yep.
So, and it really, again, it was effort. It was getting through screens. It was rotating. Right off the start, Verge kind of set the tone for the game, where he was really battling on defense. He got through a couple off-ball screens, stuck with his man. Then he read the play and shot a passing lane and picked off the ball and took it the other way for a layup. And that just kind of set the tone. He got picked off on the next play, but Derek Walker, he didn't just hang back and let the guard do whatever he wanted. He did a good job of playing in between. He showed long enough for Nebraska to recover without losing his man. And then Bryce dropped into help on the weak side and deflected the pass underneath. And that is what led to the first alley-oop. And man, when Trey threw the ball, I did not see where Bryce was. I was like, who the heck is that to? And then somewhere out of nowhere, Bryce comes down and it's one-handed catch and finish. Like, wow, that's a heck of a way to start a game. And then on the next one, Eric Curry went right at Derek Walker, and Derek just blocked him straight up. So 3 straight stops to start the game. And the first bucket was a jumper from Eric Curry, which I think Hoiberg would be fine living with. And I mean, Derek didn't even contest. He's like, fine, you want to take a long jumper, go ahead. And he hit it. Credit to him. But so it wasn't even necessarily a real breakdown, I don't think. And then Minnesota throughout this game, they switched into zone. They ran a lot of 2-3 stuff at him. And I thought Nebraska did a good job of recognizing and running some good actions, even if they didn't score every single time. And the first time they threw it, they drew a foul. Like I don't know what Minnesota did. They had all 4 guys outside of the middle above the free throw line. So they just
I was confused. I was confused with some of the defensive stuff that Minnesota was throwing at them. Yeah. I think one of the first couple times they switched to a 2-3 was when they were down 16, and I'm just like, why? Like, what are we doing here? Minnesota kind of, I mean, they tried to throw the kitchen sink at them defensively, it seemed like, because that's kind of what they've hung their hat on, is their defense. And Nebraska just wouldn't, they had answers most of the time. I think the picture that they put out of Bryce looking like he's about to smack his head on the bottom of the backboard on one of those alley-oops, I'm just like, that is wildly impressive. You don't see that every day.
No, and that's why it's unfortunate that Nebraska hasn't been able to get out and run more often this season, because that is an easy way to get Bryce points and to get him opportunities to show what he can do. A guy like that, where he's not necessarily strong enough at this point to take contact and still have explosiveness. But when you're in the open floor, when there's more space to work with, dude can absolutely fly. And we saw good examples of that. Speaking of flying around, again, the effort continued. There was that play where they got a deflection and kind of knocked the ball in the backcourt, and Lat chased it all the way down, and he ended up he had to throw it back in and ended up being a turnover the other way. But just the effort to go save that play, and then on the other end, out of the transition after Nebraska turned it back over, Derek Walker flew and spiked a 3 right into the Nebraska bench in the corner. So it's just that kind of effort that you didn't get, the extra effort, the guys rotating, playing together, the cohesiveness, that wasn't there. And then they got a little lucky too. Jamison Battle and Peyton Willis, Minnesota's best 2 players, 2 good shooters, both got wide open 3s during that start, both missed them. So it's a combination of Nebraska bringing the effort and executing at a higher level, and then Minnesota just not being ready to play. So that was a 9-2 start, and then there was an 11-2 run that allowed them to kind of push the lead to 20-8. And during that stretch, again, 1 of 3 from the field, 0 of 1 from 3, and 2 turnovers from Minnesota. So it's the defense fueling the offense, and they were taking advantage of it. And it was different guys. You had some of the bench guys in for this one. Eduardo Andre was up pressuring Eric Curry 17 feet from the basket and just basically tipped and stole the pass. And like just plays like that, like a lot of different guys were getting involved. And so I think, again, Zoe, he found Lat cutting for a layup to start that 11-2 run. Then Trey had the kind of and one, the little spin there after Lat got blocked. They got the ball back, and Trey went right back to the basket and spun in for an and one. And then you had, this is the big stretch where Keisei Tominaga's really had his minutes reduced since Trey's been back. He hasn't played a huge role, but he had one of the biggest sequences of the game where during this run, Alonzo had a bad turn, had the ball knocked away from him, and then kind of had to recover it and try to throw it back. And it got picked off, and it led to a transition play for Minnesota. And Keisei got back and took the offensive foul. I think he got a forearm from Lowy, like in his chest, upper chest, neck. Yep. And immediately after taking that offensive foul, He went down and knocked down a contested catch and shoot three. That's really, I mean, you look at him, he finished with 3 points in 7 minutes, but that right there, that's a big little stretch. Like you get that from him, 2 plays from him every single game coming off the bench like that. That'll help. That like those, like you can get multiple guys making little efforts like that. You don't have to come in and drop 20 off the bench to make an impact and make the most of your minutes. And if they can continue to get performances like that from some of these bench guys, whether it's an Eduardo or a Casey, or these guys that aren't necessarily going to play 15 to 20 minutes, but you play 5 to 10 minutes. If you can make 2 or 3 plays in that stretch, then Nebraska is going to have a much better chance of staying in these games. And they got that in this one. So that was kind of the second little surge there where they were able to build up the lead and take the 20-point lead. It was a 3 from CJ Wilcher that kind of capped that run. And again, it was a 2-3 zone, and they passed it a few times. CJ kind of just took one dribble to his right. The guy at the top of the zone didn't really crowd him, so he's like, all right, pulled up and knocked it down.
Yep.
So Minnesota missing some open threes, and Nebraska knocking down threes like that in the case they won. Shooting variance, really hasn't gone Nebraska's way most of the season, but in this one, they made their shots and Minnesota didn't. So that the rest of the half was kind of back and forth. They kind of just treaded water there. Again, they pulled ahead by 12. They were up by 11 at halftime. And I saw on the graphic or on the TV broadcast, they had a graphic that they showed at the start of the second half comparing the first half against Minnesota to the entire game against Northwestern with hustle statistics. So against Northwestern, they had 4 steals in the entire game. Nebraska had 9 steals in the first half against Minnesota. Blocks were 4-4. Again, 1 half compared to an entire game. Turnovers were 11 forced against Northwestern and 12 forced against Minnesota. Again, in half the time. And then points off turnovers were equal, 15-15. So that just kind of shows you the level of activity that they had and the impact it had, like their defense had on their offense and their ability to go out and get easy points for a team that has really struggled to get easy points this season.
Yeah. And then the second half, I mean, have a night, Alonzo Verge, right? I mean, what a half for him. I think I forget who I saw say Alonzo Verge playing very Colorado exhibition-y with about 12 minutes to go in the game. But I mean, he had himself, I mean, what do you have? 20 points? 20
points in the second half.
Yep. 20 points in the second half.
Made his first 7 shots.
Made his first 7. Yep. I mean, that sequence, I forget where it was, but where
I'll go through the whole sequence here. I've got it down in notes, but start off though, he set again, just like he did in the first half. He didn't have a great first half. He was 1 of 4 from the field. I believe he had 3 turnovers. There were 2 turnovers in a 3 possession stretch there where late in the first half where Fred yanked him and sent in Kobe to finish the half. So he didn't have a great first half, but started second half. It was a personal 6-3 run for Verge. He had their first 3 buckets. Nebraska got 3 stops to start the second half. So again, building off of the first half where you're setting the tone with your defense and kind of establishing, hey, you're not going to get anything easy. The 3 points that Minnesota scored was a 3-pointer from Jamison Battle, their first made 3 of the game. And that also kind of set the tone for Minnesota because Battle went off in the second half and he scored 21 after being held scoreless in the first half. I believe he knocked down 5 threes in the second half. Some of them were some tough ones. So they kind of that first few minutes there kind of set the tone for the second half. But after Nebraska had pulled ahead 38-24 at the end of that little 6-3 spurt, Minnesota battled back and Willis knocked down 2 threes and Willis split a pair of free throws for a 7-0 run to get the lead down to 7. And this is the point where like, okay, here we go. They're hitting everything. Nebraska's going to fall apart. That's when Verge took over. And this 12-0 run, and at the start of it, they did it all without Bryce, who picked up his 3rd foul right before this little stretch started and checked out. And so at that point, again, you're only up by 7, kind of in danger zone. You're up by 8 at that point, 40-32 when Bryce picked up his third foul. And Zoe went down, ran a little pick and roll, perfect pocket pass to Derek Walker to get started, bucket. So that's 2 points right there. On defense, they getting help. They had a breakdown. CJ got stuck in trail, Trey didn't switch. They had to drive down the basket, and the guy just ended up throwing the ball out of bounds, trying to hit the big man after he drew the help. So little help never hurts. And Zoe tried the pocket pass again and got it to Derek. This time they stripped him on the way up, and the ball went out of bounds. So they got a baseline play, and they did not put anybody on the ball. Eric Curry was in the lane with his back turned. Zoe saw the opportunity, threw it off his back to himself, went up and scored. It was so quick that the TV broadcast almost missed it because they were showing a close-up of Fred Hoiberg at that point, like making calls from the sideline. They got back just in time to see him throwing the ball and catch and finishing. So that's just kind of here we go. It's kind of that kind of a night. And then on the other end, they forced Battle into a contested elbow pull up that he missed, their first shot attempt during that stretch. And Derek got the rebound, passed it to Zoe. And as we've seen him do many times there, you knew the ball was going up, right?
Yes, 110%. Yes.
As soon as nobody picked up the ball, you're like, oh yeah, he's pulling this. And sure enough, he did. Pulled up for 3, a shot that he's gotten yanked at least 3 or 4 times, or yanked for at least 3 or 4 times, it feels like this season. Buried it. Okay, things are really rolling now. He's got it going. Knocked it down, led to a turnover. The crowd that was there got really loud. They really got into it. They started to feel like, wait, is this happening? And out of the timeout, another Minnesota turnover. Bad pass. Lat tipped it to Trey, and he pushed it ahead, who kicked it out to CJ right in front of the Nebraska bench for a 3. And again, the pressure on the ball, they ran a little flare screen for Willis, and he stepped on the sideline for another turnover. And they went back to the 2-man game. Got Derek a high post touch. Zoe cut off of him. Derek gave it back to him. Daniels kind of rotated over to cut off Verge, and he dropped it down to Walker again to complete the run. So again, 12-0 run right there. And during that stretch, Minnesota was 0 for 2 from the field with 3 turnovers. They got stops on 5 straight possessions. And suddenly you go from feeling worried to now you're up 20, you're feeling great. And that was basically ball game. Twice Minnesota cut it down to 12, but that's as close as it got because each time Nebraska answered with a big time 3. The first one from CJ Wilcher and the second one from Bryce McGowan's. So it goes back to guys made shots when they needed to in this game, which hasn't always happened this season, but they made the winning plays.
Yeah, I know. And it's crazy that the first time they make the winning plays is the first time they win a game. It's funny how that works. I think my favorite thing to make note of after this game is that Minnesota still hasn't won a game at PBA since it opened. They fall to 0-7 all time. Richard Pitino never won a game at PBA. Ben Johnson's now over. And the last time that Minnesota won a game in Lincoln, 10 years ago now, the head coaches in that game were Doc Sadler and Tubby Smith, which I thoroughly enjoyed sharing with people last night after the result. Just a good laugh. It's just little weird things like that make college basketball that much more fun. But
you think Pitino kind of gave him a friendly note on the way out, like, hey, beware that Pinnacle Bank Arena. That place is a house of horrors for us.
He might have. He's like, yeah, that visitors locker room at PBA, that is where my job ended. That is where I gave my own eulogy. So so just remember that when you walk in there.
But overall, it got sloppy down the stretch. They shot 15 of 28 from the free throw line. Was it 12 of 23 in the second half, I believe. They gave Minnesota every chance to get back into it, but defensively they never quit. They didn't let the missed free throws and the turnovers down the stretch really kind of compound into something more damaging, and they were able to finish it out. And that's the benefit. We talked about their close game struggles, and maybe what it was going to take was to not be in a close game. Just do your work early enough to where you can make those mistakes and still come out feeling relatively comfortable throughout the whole time. And that's what happened in this game. They ended up shooting 48% from the field, 39% from three. Again, only 54% from the free throw line, but 11 turnovers isn't bad. I think you'll take that. They won the second chance points battle for the first time probably all season, at least against a high major team.
Two teams that came into this game, and I believe the bottom 10 in offensive rebounding percentage, and naturally the offensive rebound battle ended up in a tie.
Yeah, the only team I think that Nebraska played that's worse at getting offensive rebounds than them is Minnesota. So, but 40-22, they won the battle in the paint, and 3-point. It was pretty much even from the free throw line and the 3-point line. So that really was the difference. And a lot of that, again, was the turnovers leading to good opportunities, the execution from Verge in the second half down the stretch there, kind of during that run where after a couple of those buckets early on, he was really feeling it. He even hit one of his little kind of pound the ball, fade away jumpers in the lane shot. Like when that went down, you had to be feeling like, okay, this is the night. It's happening. But yeah, they ended up with 22 points from Verge. Bryce McGowan's pretty efficient, 16 on 6 of 11 shooting, 3 of 5 from the free throw line. Derek Walker, 11 points, 7 boards, 4 of 4 from the field, 3 of 4 from the line. It's amazing. You look at what Derek has done from the free throw line this season, after having it be such a big weakness in his overall game. He's right at around 70% now for a guy that was sub 50 at one point. So that is huge. Like he's hitting. It's a pretty close battle between his field goal percentage and his free throw percentage right now, which that's kind of a mind blowing stat. He's at 69.8 from the free throw line and at 69% from the field.
Oh my goodness. No, that's yeah. I mean, and that's, you want to talk about maximizing, man. I mean, just every game is workmanlike for him. Everything he does is not very flashy. I mean, I kind of, until you said he had 11, I wouldn't have guessed he had 11. Just quiet, does his job. I mean, he's, we're coming up on a senior day here. There's only 2 home games left. Who really knows who's going to walk on senior day? But I mean, if Derek's one of the guys walking, and he's got a decision to make. But you gotta tip your cap to the strides he's made and the work he's done this year for this team, regardless of how this thing may end, I think.
Yeah, and Fred talked about kind of changing the system to work through Derek a lot more and to take advantage of how efficient he had been. And it worked for a little bit. And then Derek had kind of fallen into a slump recently where things were a little bit more difficult. He was turning the ball over at a higher rate. He wasn't getting as many scoring opportunities. So it was good to see him kind of get, was that his first double-digit game in a while? Let's see. So he had the 10 against Michigan, but he had been in single digits in 2, 4, 5 of his last 6 before that one. So good to see him play well, and even more so because of kind of the circumstances of that game, how I forget the name of the scholarship.
The Bus Whitehead Memorial Scholarship.
Yeah, so he was honored with that. They presented it during a timeout, and obviously he's a little busy over there in the huddle. So what he did is he had a group of kids from the Malone Center go out there and accept the award on his behalf, along with Trev Alberts, and kind of just let the kids be recognized, walk out there on the court in front of all those people. And Derek said, I asked him about it, he said he interned at the Malone Center over the summer and just got to know the kids during his time there. And he, knowing his own background, like he didn't get a chance to go to like college games when he was a kid. So he wanted to provide this opportunity for these guys. A lot of those kids probably haven't had many, if any, chances to go to a game like that. So he brought them in for a game, let them go out there and kind of experience the atmosphere, go out there and accept the award on his behalf, kind of get the spotlight shown on him. and then they got to stick around and watch a win too. So he was, I think that the win meant even more for him because of that. And Walker is just certainly a guy that he's just been so steady all season, and he's absolutely the kind of guy that you love having in your program.
Absolutely. So that's some positivity. Talking about a win. Holy cow! We haven't been able to talk about a win since December. That's crazy. But another note, they had a couple unofficial visitors, some 2024 in-staters in last night in Wahoo's Marcus Glock and Millard North's Neil Mosser. Good for them to come see a win as well. Some names to watch, and maybe who knows what level. Still early. They're 2024 guys, but Nate Lenzer has kind of been the point man. It seems like with just getting out there in terms of going to some games, whether it's to check on Josiah Dotzler at Bellevue West. I think you said he was at Scott Norris.
Yep.
To watch Jake Brack. What do you think about the way they've been going about that these last couple of weeks?
It's a good move. Like even like none of these guys are surefire Big Ten players at this point. Who knows what level they're going to end up at? But you're not going to be able to land the next guy that is without putting in the work. And that's the same thing that the football program's going through now, and they're really trying to reinvest in that with Mickey Joseph. And I think like part of that story is Mickey like going to Omaha Northwest.
I think he went to Benson. I think he went to Benson too.
Like just going to schools that normally wouldn't be on the list for coaches kind of going through, but just to meet the people, to show his face, to kind of get a feel for everybody, and not just focusing on the ones where they can do something for you right now. It's just kind of building up that two-way mutual relationship, and just showing that you're willing to put in the work to be in the community and to build up those relationships. So it's kind of the same thing in basketball now, where Jake Brack is I think he'll have a shot to be a Division I player. Is he going to be any higher than a Summit League or something like that? He's got to make a lot of progress before that is the case, but you never know. And it's worth it to go take a look now to kind of just like put a pin on him. Like, all right, get your
foot in the door.
Yeah. He's going to have a chance. Yep. And we'll just kind of keep our eye on him. Again, same thing with Mosser and Glock. And again, you mentioned Josiah Delser, who Lenzer has seen a couple of times. So it only means good things. Who knows what that will produce in terms of actual commits for Nebraska, if in the short term, long term, whatever it may be. But you got to put in the work before the results happen. So it's good to see them taking those steps for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I know people are probably tired of hearing comparisons, between football and basketball, but I mean, it appears that at least on the recruiting front, there's some fences to mend in the state, and just either to mend them or to build them in the first place. And the first step is to get out and about, relationship building, X's and O's and on the field, off the field stuff is really important as a coach, but relationship building isn't too far behind. And that's good to see. Good to see that being emphasized by both programs down in Lincoln.
And good to make it happen now with what we have 2 home games left.
Yep, 2 home games left.
Kind of crazy to think about.
No, it's flown by, man. It's flown by.
So up next, Nebraska will kind of continue this stretch against the bottom half, but this is the toughest team coming up that they'll play in that bottom half of the standings, in with the trip to Iowa City on Sunday. And actually, Nebraska's next 2 opponents are facing off against each other as we are recording this on Thursday night, and Iowa is smacking Maryland by 20. So rough season for the Terps, but that's down the line. We'll probably talk again after the Iowa game. So we'll look at Maryland down the line. They've got a little bit of gap in the schedule next week.
Yeah, we're only going to have Iowa to talk about. And they get from Sunday in Iowa City to a Friday night 8:00 at PBA next week. So yeah, we might have to do a little dive into the Terps to preview next Friday's game. But yeah, Iowa things kind of start and end with Keegan Murray. We've made a couple references to him throughout the year. The jump that he's made, even though, I mean, he was preseason all league, but I don't think people expected him to be one of the top scorers in the country, averaging 24 points a game. This isn't the Iowa of Luka Garza. This is a pretty guard forward heavy team. And Jordan Bohannon in his 12th year as a Hawkeye, Fran's two sons, and the Murray brothers. And then they've had a very up and down. I mean, they've been very up and down, but I mean, a lot of the Big Ten's been very up and down. So, they're not alone in that.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I remember watching the Murray brothers play for the Iowa Barnstormers second team. The top team was AJ Green and Ed Chang and Joe
Wieskamp.
Yes. And so like that was a pretty talented team. But still, like, these guys were playing on a second team, they go down, and I was like, oh, these guys are interesting. Like, for guys playing on a second team, they were pretty good. I saw them play a couple of times, and they go down and spend a year at IMG Academy and just kind of transform their bodies a little bit. They make a big leap during that year to go from kind of like, oh, these are interesting, to, yeah, they're definitely Division I players, high major players, and then to go from where Keegan went from a good role player last year to, like you said, 22 and a half points a game. And then Chris has really kind of come on strong a little bit too, and is up over 10 points a game now, shooting the ball well from three, whereas Keegan does more of his damage inside the arc. So it's a nice little combination. Plus Patrick McCaffrey, who I also saw play at the grassroots level a little bit.
A lot of guys on this roster you saw play grassroots, even Peyton Sanford, who's got a little role coming in off the bench. We watched him play at Waukee, and we watched him play grassroots. So some familiar names up and down this entire roster.
Yeah, Bohannon hasn't had a great season coming back as a super senior, but he, as of recording, early in the second half against Maryland, he was 7 of 11 from three. So that's
the Jordan Bohannon we know and love.
Yeah, sure, if you want to put it that way. It's a case where you're going to have to be on, like, you got to be on the scouting report. Like, he's not having a great season, but he absolutely can kill you if you let him. You're going to have to figure out what they're going to do with Murray. Interesting, we've seen so far a couple times this season, since Trey McGowan's has been back, where Trey has started out on kind of one of the main perimeter guys, and then when things have started to go the wrong direction, he's switched over. We saw it against Rutgers, where he was guarding whether Geo Baker or one of their bigger wings, and then he switched over to Ron Harper when Nebraska needed him to, and did a good job on Ron. And then in this game, when Jamison Battle got hot in the second half, Trey went over and took on that assignment and kind of cooled them, or at least limited his opportunities a little bit more. So he is a nice piece to have. It'll be interesting to see kind of the defensive matchups. You've got a lot of bigger wings more so than guards there. So we'll see kind of who does Latmay end up guarding, who does Trey end up guarding. I think the matchups will be pretty interesting. But I'm looking forward to seeing that. We'll see if they can build off of success, if they can replicate, like, okay, this really worked for us. Let's do this again. Let's do it the same way. And then hopefully maybe do it even a little bit better, because they're probably not going to be able to win at Iowa City playing the exact same way they did at home against Minnesota, because we mentioned kind of all the opportunities, how much Minnesota contributed to that. Iowa's probably not going to be as turnover prone. They're probably not going to miss some of those wide open threes early on. But if you bring that effort and execute, maybe play a little bit crisper basketball, you'll have a chance.
Oh, I'd agree. it's kind of tough to ever count Fred Hoiberg out against Iowa. I know last year didn't go too well, but George Niang still will call him the Hawkeye killer from time to time. I'm not going to say they're going to win, but you never know. I know that the 2 games in 2 weeks against Iowa probably means a little something extra to Fred. But so that's what we got coming up. Super Bowl Sunday, 1:00 tip against the Hawkeyes. And that'll be the only game we have to talk about when we come back next week. This weekend, we will both be out in Grand Island for our annual pilgrimage to the Heartland Hoops Classic. It should be a fun slate from top to bottom. And a big game on Friday night too. Tino Martinez does a great job bringing in these big name national high school basketball powers, and he's got depending on where you look, 2 of the top 3 at least high school teams in the country going at it on Friday night in his own gym. Sunrise Christian taking on Link Academy, and then a full day Saturday.
Yeah, and if Link Academy sounds familiar, it's because that's where Karan McPherson came from. He played for their prep team last year. This isn't the prep team; it's the actual high school team, and they really Link is kind of a newer program, but they went all in this last offseason and landed some big time transfers and some familiar names that Nebraska fans will know. 5-star Omaha Bigelow, who's visited Lincoln. 4-star point guard Trey Green, who also visited Lincoln. Those are both juniors. They've got a couple of 5-star commits in Jordan Walsh, who's heading to Arkansas. Julian Phillips is going to LSU. Those guys are seniors. They've got a couple 4-star bigs that you'll see in the Big Ten in the future with Felix Okpara, who's headed to Ohio State, and Terrace Reed Jr., who's headed to Michigan, and also visited Nebraska back for that Ohio State game day visit when Wilhelm Breidenbach was here, among many others. So again, another familiar name that's that we're seeing pop up here. And Sunrise Christian, top ranked team in the country. They just came off winning the NIBC championship. And if you're unaware what that is, it's basically some of the best like powerhouse programs in the country just decided to team up and form a league of themselves. And so you've got teams like Sunrise, like IMG Academy, like Wasatch Academy, who is the other team that's going to be in Grand Island this weekend. And all those teams kind of get together to schedule each other and play each other. And I think Sunrise only lost one. I think they went 7-1 in league play there, and then won the championship over IMG. So pretty talented team. Grady Dick is a name that might sound familiar. Nebraska, Creighton both offered him early on. He kind of developed into a 5-star. He's headed to Kansas. Mark Mitchell is headed to Duke, another 5-star senior. I saw him. He and Grady Dick both played for KC Run GMC. Those guys came up to Omaha during Hunter Salas's 17U summer and played at River Cities against OSA. And those guys, it was a fun game. They've got let's see here. Dylan Hunter is a 3-star senior committed to Baylor. They've got Cam Corin is a 4-star committed to Florida State senior. And then they've got a couple of 23 4-stars in Layden Blocker and Scotty Middleton. So it's those teams are absolutely loaded. I'm kind of jealous. I think I'm going to stick here and watch a local game. Central is playing at Westside on Friday. That'll probably be where I'm at. But Jacob's going to be out there for this game on Friday, and then we'll spend all day watching the local teams play each other leading up to the kind of showcase game at the end of the day on Saturday, which is Link Academy against Wasatch.
Yeah, it's pretty good slate. They try to get a lot of cross-class games on the slate from top to bottom. They'll try to get all the Grand Island high schools involved. I think all 3 are in it this year. Northwest kicking it off against Ashland Greenwood in the 8 a.m. game. Isaac Trout and GI Senior High going against Omaha Westside, the top team in Class A. And I forget who does GICC play?
Elkhorn North.
Elkhorn North. Okay, so they got some good cross class matchups from top to bottom. But yeah, like Jacob said, I'll be at the game Friday night if you want to follow along. I know Strive is doing a stream. I'll have tweets, I'll have takes, and then we'll be at the Heartland Event Center all day Saturday. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so I might talk a little bit about that on the pod next week, but we'll definitely get into that Iowa game. Hopefully, it'll be another good one that we can have some fun breaking down as opposed to what we've done most of the season. But either way, we'll be back ready to talk to you guys again. Please subscribe, rate, review to the podcast, tell your friends, tell an enemy, in the words of Brandon Vogel. Just gonna get the word out there a little bit. We finally get to talk about a win. So hopefully you'll enjoy listening us talking about a win, and hopefully we'll get a couple more chances to have this kind of pod as opposed to what we've done most of the season. But until next week, this is Nebraska Shooter.
A Hurrdat Media Production.